The horse stumbled on loose rock, and for one sharp second, Cole Thatcher thought his heart was about to give out again. He grabbed the saddle horn, breath tearing out of his chest, the desert tilting sideways around him. Red dust swirled up in a choking cloud, the late afternoon sun pressing down like a hand on the back of his neck. The pain wasn't the same as before. Not the crushing, burning thing that had dropped him to a hospital floor 3 weeks ago. This was sharper, faster, enough to scare him. Easy, he muttered more to himself than the horse. Easy. The animal steadied, snorting, and Cole forced himself to breathe the way the doctor had drilled into him. Slow. Count it out. Don't fight it. When the world stopped spinning, he lifted his head and looked at the house. It sat on the rise like it always had, crooked, weather-beaten, still standing out of pure stubbornness. The old Thatcher place squatting against the sky at the edge of Rustwood Ridge, where the road turned to dust and the land forgot how to be gentle. Cole hadn't seen it in nearly 15 years. He'd imagined this moment 100 times while lying awake in his apartment back east, listening to traffic and sirens. In those versions, the house was empty, silent, waiting. Just him, the wind, and whatever ghosts he'd decided to bring back with him. He swung down from the saddle boots, hitting the dirt harder than he meant to. His chest gave a warning thump, then settled. He stood there a moment, hand pressed flat against his ribs, staring. Something was wrong. The gate was closed. Not just closed, fixed. The old split rail had been replaced with newer wood, smoothed and fitted clean. Someone had painted it a dull blue, the kind of color that looked like it belonged there. The hinges didn't sag. The fence line was straight. Cole frowned. He pushed the gate open. It didn't squeal like it used to. Someone had oiled it. The yard was different too. Grass where there used to be nothing but dust and goat heads. A narrow garden patch along the side of the house, green and alive, small white stones lining the rows. Smoke curled thin and steady from the stovepipe. Cole's pulse ticked up again. He took the steps 2 at a time, every instinct he had screaming at him now. The front door was shut, but light spilled through the cracks. He reached for the handle. Before he could knock, the door swung open from the inside. A woman stood there frozen. She wasn't what he expected. Not some vagrant man, not a drunk, not a thief with a knife. She was small, dark-haired, her face lined in a way that came from worry more than age. A faded cotton dress, sleeves rolled to the elbows. Her hands were wet, flecked with flour. Behind her, a little girl clutched the hem of her skirt, eyes wide and wary. For a beat, no one spoke. Then Cole said the words that had been waiting on his tongue since he rode up the hill. "This is my land. My name's still on the deed." The woman swallowed. Her chin lifted just enough to be defiant or proud or scared, Cole couldn't tell which. "Maybe all three." "I know," she said quietly. That answer threw him. He'd expected excuses, lies, denial. "You know," his voice came out rougher than he meant. "Then you know you're trespassing." The little girl tightened her grip. Somewhere deeper in the house, a baby started to cry. The sound hit Cole like a punch. The woman turned halfway, calling softly, in a language he didn't recognize, something gentle and low. The crying eased, but didn't stop. She faced him again, eyes steady now. "My name is Ada Blackbird," she said. "I didn't mean harm. The house was empty. Has been for years." "It wasn't empty," Cole snapped. "It was mine." Ada nodded once. "I understand." That made him angrier. Understanding wasn't supposed to look like that. Calm. Measured. Like she'd already accepted whatever came next. He stepped inside before he could stop himself. The air smelled like bread and sage. Clean. Lived in. A rug lay on the floor that he'd never seen before. His old table sat scrubbed and polished, a vase of desert flowers set square in the center. Near the hearth, a small boy lay on a blanket, his chest rising too fast, cheeks flushed. Cole's anger faltered, skidding into something unfamiliar. How long, he asked. Ada hesitated. 3 months. 3 months. While he'd been closing deals, flying coast to coast, telling himself he didn't need this place. 3 months someone else had been living inside his childhood. I could call the sheriff, he said. The words sounded thin even to him. There is no sheriff, Ada replied gently. Roy retired last winter. Of course he did. Cole had missed everything. The baby coughed, a wet, rattling sound that scraped along Cole's nerves. Ada moved to him immediately, lifting him with practiced care. He's sick, Cole said. He gets that way, she answered. The dust. Cole dragged a hand down his face. The room felt smaller now, hotter. His chest tightened again, though this time he wasn't sure it was his heart. I came here to recover, he said. Doctor's orders. No stress. Ada studied him, then really looked at him. His pallor. The way he favored his left side. The faint tremor in his hand. You don't look well, she said. That's not your concern. No, she agreed. It's not. Silence stretched between them, thick and awkward. The girl peeked out from behind Ada's skirt. What's your name? Cole asked her softer. Lena, she whispered. Lena, he repeated, then glanced back at Ada. You can't stay here. Ada's jaw tightened. For the first time, something like fear broke through her calm. Give me time, she said. Just a little. 10 days. I'll find another place. Cole almost laughed. 10 days. He hadn't planned past tomorrow. He looked around again at the care in every corner, at the children, at the life that had rooted itself in his absence. Against every sensible instinct he had, he nodded. 10 days, he said. But I stay too. Relief crossed Ada's face so quickly she couldn't hide it. She bowed her head slightly, a gesture that felt older than the house. Thank you, she said. Truly. He turned away before she could say more, the weight of what he'd just agreed to settling heavy in his chest. That night, Cole lay awake in the bed that used to belong to his parents, listening to unfamiliar sounds. Soft footsteps, low voices, a lullaby carried on the edge of another language. The house creaked and breathed around him, no longer empty, no longer his alone. Outside, the desert wind rose, rattling the windows like a warning. In 10 days, one of them would have to leave, and Cole Thatcher had the uneasy feeling that whatever came next would change more than just who slept under this roof. Just because we're under one roof don't mean we're family. The words hung in the air longer than they needed to. Cole hadn't meant to say them out loud, not like that, not with the edge that came out. But Ada didn't flinch. She just stood at the sink, her hands elbow-deep in soapy water, eyes steady through the window, like she hadn't even heard him. But he knew she had. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen, casting long lines across the wood floor. The smell of strong coffee and fried cornmeal cakes filled the space, tempting in a way that irritated Cole more than it should have. He sat at the end of the table, still in his old flannel shirt, reading, glasses low on his nose, pretending to skim the local newspaper Roy had dropped off the night before. The words blurred. His chest still felt tight, not from the heart, not today, but from everything else. Ada rinsed the last plate and set it in the drying rack. She wiped her hands on a towel, slow and deliberate, then finally looked at him. "You're right," she said. "We're not." Cole set the paper down. "Didn't mean it like that. I know exactly how you meant it." She didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. There was more steel in her calm than he had in his anger. Across the room, Lena sat cross-legged on the floor, with a tin lunchbox full of crayons, humming a tune under her breath, drawing a picture of what looked like a horse with wings. Tommy slept curled up in a sun patch, like a kitten breathing easy for once. Cole rubbed the back of his neck. "I just meant, it's a weird situation." Ada folded the towel neatly, like she was controlling everything through her hands. "We didn't ask to be here, but we're not hiding either. You're in my house. And you gave us 10 days. That was generous." She met his eyes again. "But don't expect me to pretend we're playing house." Cole didn't answer. He didn't know what to say. All he knew was that the house didn't feel like his anymore, not entirely. Every time he turned a corner, there was something unfamiliar. A colorful quilt on the couch, a prayer feather hanging from the ceiling beam, little moccasins lined up near the door. And yet none of it felt wrong. He poured himself a second cup of coffee. It tasted better than anything he remembered brewing on his own. He heard a door creak outside, then the shuffle of boots. Ada's shoulders relaxed almost imperceptibly. "Martha's here," she said. Cole raised an eyebrow. "Who's Martha?" Ada was already at the door, opening it before the knock came. On the porch stood a woman in her 70s, tall and wrapped in a shawl patterned with earth tones and sky blue. Her long silver braid was tied with a leather strap, and her face was lined like sandstone carved slowly by time. Her eyes, though, were sharp, alive. A hawk watching the land. "Martha Greyfeather," she said, smiling at Ada before turning her gaze on Cole. "You must be the man with the cracked heart." Cole stood. "Excuse me, don't worry. It's not an insult. Most men have broken hearts. Yours just happened to show up on an EKG." Ada chuckled softly for the first time all morning. Even Lena looked up amused. Martha stepped inside without invitation and immediately made herself at home. She placed a woven basket on the table filled with bundles of dried herbs, what looked like homemade salves, and a jar of pickled something that Cole didn't care to guess at. "I brought what I owed," she said to Ada, "and what I feared you wouldn't ask for." "Thank you," Ada said. Cole watched the exchange with curiosity. "What is all that medicine?" Martha replied. "And stories, depending on how you use it." He smirked. "You some kind of healer." "She's more than that," Ada said quietly. "She's family." That word again. Martha studied Cole like she was reading the lines of his soul. "You grew up here?" she asked. "Until I was 18. Then I left." "Most people do, but the land remembers." Cole bristled. "It's just land." Martha gave a slow, patient smile like she'd heard the same thing from 100 men who never came back. She shifted to check Tommy, laying a hand on his forehead. "Fever's down," she murmured. "But don't let the desert fool you. It bites back when you forget to respect it." Ada nodded. Martha's gaze lingered on Cole again. "And the house, it's mine," he said too fast. "I didn't ask that. I asked, is it still yours?" Cole didn't have an answer. After Martha left, the day stretched long and dry. Cole tried to focus on repairs. The porch rail was loose. The barn roof needed patching, but his energy ran thin. He found himself watching the way Ada braided Lena's hair, the way Tommy clung to her shawl, the way she moved like she belonged in this place more than he ever had. That afternoon, Roy Tumbleweed rolled up in a rusted-out Ford with a six-pack and 2 bags of groceries. I figured you'd be too proud to ask for anything, and she's too proud to admit she needs it, he said, unloading them onto the table. Ada offered a quiet thank you and disappeared to the kitchen. Roy and Cole sat outside on the porch. I see you met Martha, Roy said. Is she always that cryptic? Only when she likes you? Cole snorted. I don't need folk wisdom. I just want to get through 10 days without dropping dead or going crazy. Roy popped a beer. Then you probably shouldn't have come back. Cole stared out across the ridge, the sun just starting to dip. I didn't come here for this, he said. I came to be alone. And instead you found a woman, 2 kids, and a house that ain't waiting to be empty anymore. Roy paused. Maybe it ain't her trespassing. Maybe it's you. Cole didn't answer. Later that evening, as the sky turned amber and the coyotes started howling in the distance, Ada brought out a simple dinner: corn stew, flatbread, black beans. She didn't speak much. Neither did Cole. But when Lena offered him a crooked drawing of the house colored with green grass and smiling stick figures, he took it without comment. He stared at it long after she went to bed. 3 figures stood in front of the house. One tall, one with long hair, one tiny one with round cheeks, all smiling. Cole looked at the 4th figure standing off to the side, arms crossed. No smile. He traced the outline with his thumb. Just because we're under one roof, he murmured, echoing his own words, don't mean we're family. But the part he didn't say stuck louder than the rest. What if I want to be inside? Ada tucked her children in. Outside, Cole sat awake watching the sky shift, knowing tomorrow would come whether he was ready or not. And for the first time since he got back, he wasn't so sure he wanted the 10 days to end. She makes coffee like she's lived here forever. Cole didn't realize he'd said it out loud until he felt eyes on him. Ada stood across the kitchen, pouring the rest of the pot into an old enamel mug. She didn't flinch, didn't react, but the corner of her mouth tugged just slightly, the closest thing to a smirk he'd seen from her. She handed him the mug without a word. It was still early, barely past 6. The house was quiet, except for the occasional creak of wood and the lazy tick of the clock above the sink. Outside, the sky was just turning gold. Another dry, sunburned day stretching ahead over the ridge. Cole sat at the table, rubbing a palm across his face. He hadn't slept well. His back ached from the old mattress, and his thoughts had kept him pacing the floor sometime around midnight. But the smell of that coffee, it hit him like a memory he didn't know he missed. Dark, earthy, hot enough to bite. Ada moved around the kitchen with a kind of quiet rhythm, barefoot shawl draped loose over her shoulders. She wasn't performing. She wasn't trying. She just was. And somehow she made his house feel more like home than it had since before his mother died. Thanks, he muttered, sipping. It was perfect again. Exactly the way he liked it, though he hadn't said a word about it. I found the grounds in the cabinet, she said, still not looking at him. Only one kind. Figured that's the way you liked it. He nodded. You figured right. Ada didn't smile, but her shoulders eased. She started mixing flour in a bowl, the motion quick and practiced. There was something about watching her work, measured, efficient, like she was holding things together with every movement that made it hard for him to look away. I can make my own breakfast, he said suddenly. I know, she replied. But you didn't. That shut him up. He watched Lena emerge from the back room, hair messy, dragging a stuffed animal by the arm. She rubbed her eyes and climbed into the chair beside him like it was routine. "Morning, Uncle Cole?" He blinked. Uncle Ada paused, glancing back. Lena shrugged, yawning. "It's faster than Mr. Thatcher. And Mama says you don't like being called sir." Cole couldn't argue with that. The word uncle felt strange, but not bad. Tommy's soft babbling followed his chubby hands reaching for Ada as she scooped him up from the woven cradle. Cole cleared his throat and looked out the window. The sun was hitting the garden now, casting sharp light across the tilled rows. "You always up this early?" he asked. Ada nodded. "Have to be. It's the only quiet time." He could understand that. As she plated warm fry bread and eggs, the screen door creaked. A familiar voice called out, cheerful and loud. "Morning, house thieves." Cole turned toward the porch just as a man stepped inside without knocking. Roy Tumbleweed, former sheriff, wore the same dusty jeans and crooked grin. He always had a six-pack of soda under one arm and a bag of canned beans in the other. "You still let yourself in without invitation," Cole said, already half smiling. Roy grinned. "This is Rustwood Ridge. No one knocks unless there's a shotgun behind the door." Ada greeted him politely, taking the bag. Roy gave Lena a wink and handed her a wrapped butterscotch candy from his pocket. "Gotta keep my fan club happy." He sat at the table like it was his own house. "So, what's it like living with a woman smarter than you and kids who talk circles around you?" Cole took another sip of coffee. "Peaceful." Roy barked a laugh. "I bet." Ada stepped out to hang laundry, and Roy lowered his voice, eyes gleaming. "She's something. She's not. I didn't say she was. I said she's something." Cole exhaled slowly, staring into the mug. "It's not like that." Roy leaned back in the chair. "But it could be. She's here for a few more days. That's it." Roy nodded but didn't look convinced. "You know what I think?" "No, but I know you're going to tell me. I think you came out here thinking you needed space. What you needed was someone who wasn't impressed by your money or your name. Someone who'd still make coffee without asking." Cole didn't answer. Roy stood stretching. "Martha told me something once. Said the land gives back only when you quit trying to own it. People are the same way." He tipped his hat to Lena and headed out. Cole watched Ada through the window. She was pinning up clothes on the line, her hair blowing loose, eyes narrowed against the sun. That afternoon, he walked the edge of the backyard. The garden looked better than anything he'd ever grown. Tomatoes climbing, peppers thriving. Chickens pecked in a makeshift coop. He didn't even know where she got chickens. She did all this in 3 months. "You're staring at the dirt," a voice said behind him. He turned. Martha Greyfeather stood near the fence, leaning on a carved walking stick. "Didn't hear you ride up," he said. "I don't ride. I walk. Keeps the bones young." She stepped forward and looked over the garden. She did this with borrowed tools and borrowed time. "Not bad, huh?" Cole nodded. "Not bad. She didn't know you were coming back?" "Nobody did. Whole town thought you vanished for good." "I didn't abandon it," Cole said quietly. "You just forgot it." She looked at him, all mirth gone. That woman showed up here in winter with 2 sick kids and nowhere to sleep. She worked this land like it was hers because it was the only way to survive. She earned her space. "I'm not throwing her out," Cole said. "I gave her 10 days. Martha arched a brow. And what happens after day 10, Cole didn't have an answer. That evening, he sat on the porch, the screen door creaking in rhythm with the wind. Tommy giggled in the grass. Lena chased the cat around the old oak tree. Ada came up beside him quietly. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded. "Roy say something to rattle you, no more than usual." She sat on the step, not quite next to him. "Close enough, though." "I'm not trying to take you home," she said softly. "I know. I just wanted somewhere my kids could sleep through the night." Cole looked out over the land. The shadows stretched long now. He thought of cities and boardrooms and hospitals with beeping machines. "Funny," he said. "I spent 20 years trying to buy peace. Turns out it was right here the whole time. Smelled like coffee and bread." Ada didn't reply, but she didn't leave either. Tomorrow would bring another piece of truth, another crack in the wall between them. And neither of them was pretending they weren't starting to care. "Your mama never wanted you to stay gone forever." Cole stared at the letter in his hands. The paper was yellowed and soft-folded so many times it had permanent creases. The ink had faded, but the handwriting was unmistakable, loopy and sharp, just like his mother used to write on grocery lists or birthday cards. But this letter had never made it to the mailbox. It had sat hidden behind a false back panel in the kitchen cupboard, buried under old flour tins. He hadn't meant to find it. He'd just been looking for the sugar. There were more letters inside the small tin box, 6 of them, each one addressed to him. None ever sent. Cole sat at the table in the quiet morning light, the letters spread before him like a confession. The coffee pot gurgled behind him, but he didn't move. "I still remember the way you used to run through the fields, dust in your boots, always chasing something bigger. I knew you wouldn't stay. Your father never understood that, but I did. I just wish you'd write. Wish I knew where you were sleeping, if you were okay." He folded the page slowly. His fingers were trembling. The ache that had started in his chest wasn't the sharp kind, not the kind that scared the doctor. It was dull, heavy, like he'd been carrying something too long without noticing. He looked up when he heard soft footsteps behind him. Ada stood there, her hair pulled back into a braid, arms crossed over her chest. She looked past him at the table. "You found them," she said quietly. "You knew they were here. I helped your mother clean before she passed. She asked me to hide them. Said if you ever came home, you'd find them when you needed to." Cole leaned back in the chair, the old wood creaking beneath him. "She knew I wasn't coming back. She hoped you would. There's a difference." Ada moved around the table, careful not to touch the letters. She poured him a fresh cup of coffee and set it down gently. "She talked about you often," she said. "Even when folks around here stopped asking." Cole swallowed hard. "She was the only one who didn't hate me after I left." "No one hated you," Ada said. "They just stopped expecting anything from you." He winced at the truth in that. Outside, the wind picked up, knocking dust against the windows. The weather was turning. That dry kind of wind that meant change or trouble. "Did you know my father?" he asked suddenly. Ada hesitated. "Everyone knew your father. That bad, huh?" She didn't answer directly. He had strong ideas about who belonged here and who didn't. Cole looked at her. "You mean he was a racist?" She shrugged. "He was proud. Bitter. Whatever you call it, it made your mother's life harder." He nodded. He didn't like her being friends with anyone who wasn't like us. Ada's voice was soft. She didn't care. They sat in silence for a long moment, the past hanging between them like a dust cloud that hadn't settled. Cole cleared his throat. She deserved better. She was kind, Ada said, and strong. She never let anyone tell her how to live. He reached for another letter but stopped. The paper was too fragile, and his hands weren't steady. Ada sat down across from him. You don't have to read them all now. I want to. Why? He looked up, eyes darker than she'd ever seen them. Because I didn't come back for the land. I came because I felt something pulling. Like maybe I had unfinished business. You did. They both turned toward the sound of a small voice. Lena stood in the doorway, her hair tangled from sleep, her stuffed rabbit clutched tight. Did your mama write letters to you too? She asked. Cole nodded. She did. Lena thought about that. Did she miss you? Cole smiled gently. Yeah, a lot. Lena came closer, staring at the papers. You gonna write her back? Ada moved to speak, but Cole held up a hand. That's a good question, kiddo. He looked down at the letters. I think I already am. That afternoon, Roy stopped by with his usual lack of formality, dropping a bag of canned peaches on the counter and grabbing a chair like he'd paid for it. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said, watching Cole pour himself some water. Found letters my mother wrote me. She never sent them. Roy nodded slowly. Yeah. She wrote a lot after you left. Used to come into the store once a week, mail something, even if she didn't know where to send it. She knew I wasn't coming back. She didn't care. Said letters were prayers. You just gotta put them out there and hope they land. Cole sat down exhausted in a way he couldn't quite explain. Roy glanced toward the door where Ada was outside hanging sheets. You gonna tell her what? That your mama used to leave food at the end of their driveway every winter. That she covered the cost of their propane more than once. Folks think kindness is just saying hello, but it's more than that. It's what you do when nobody sees. Cole looked out the window. She didn't even like this town sometimes, he said. But she never left it. Roy nodded. Same could be said about you. Cole scoffed. I left. Physically sure. But if you'd really left, you wouldn't be here now. That night after the house quieted down, and the wind had picked up into a full-throated howl through the trees, Cole stood on the back porch, watching the clothesline flap wildly in the dark. Ada came out, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She believed in you, Ada said without prompting. Even when you didn't believe in yourself. I didn't deserve that. No one ever really does. Cole looked at her. She thought we'd meet, she hoped. He stepped closer, watching the way the wind caught the edges of her shawl. You ever think about leaving? Ada hesitated. Every day. Especially when things get too quiet. That's when I start wondering when the other shoe will drop. He nodded. Me too. Their eyes met. It was the first time either of them said it that they were afraid, that the fear sat just beneath the surface, waiting for a reason to speak. Your mama never wanted you to stay gone forever, Ada said, again softer this time. Cole reached out, brushing a piece of wind-blown hair from her cheek. I don't think I'm going anywhere, he whispered. The wind blew harder, rustling the trees like they were whispering secrets. Inside, Lena stirred in her sleep, calling softly for her mother. Ada hesitated, then turned back toward the door. Tomorrow looks like storm weather. Cole nodded. Let it come. They walked inside together, and as the door shut behind them, the first fat drop of rain hit the porch. Tomorrow a storm would arrive, and with it something much worse. He can't breathe. Please, help him. Ada's voice cracked as she bent over Tommy, who was limp in her arms, his tiny chest rising in short, desperate jerks. His lips were tinged blue. His eyes fluttered but didn't focus. Panic surged up her spine like wildfire. Cole was already pulling boots over his jeans, heart hammering. The storm had blown in faster than expected, wind howling against the windows, dust thick enough outside to blur the horizon. The sky had turned a dirty yellow, the air dry and electric warning of something worse to come. "Is it his lungs again?" Cole asked, grabbing his coat. Ada nodded quickly. "It's worse this time. He was coughing all night. Then it just turned." She didn't cry, not really. Just this fierce, tight urgency in her voice that said this has happened before, but not like this. Cole looked toward the front door. Visibility was almost nothing. The road was gone, swallowed by dust and heat. No signal out here, no. It cuts out when the wind kicks up. Then I'll go. What, Martha's closer than the clinic? She knows what to do. She helped last time, didn't she? Ada hesitated. Yes, but you can't ride in that. I don't have a choice. She stepped forward, blocking his path. You're not strong enough. You still get dizzy in the mornings. What if I'll be fine? The look she gave him, then half gratitude, half fear, knocked the breath from his lungs more than the dust outside. She pulled a scarf from a drawer and tied it around his neck. Tie it over your mouth. Wet it. And take the East Ridge Trail. It's narrow, but the wind cuts less through there. Cole nodded, mounting the old horse he'd been working back into riding shape. The wind screamed around him as he urged it forward into the storm. His vision shrank to a few feet, everything else a wall of spinning grit. Each mile felt like 10. His chest burned. His arms shook from gripping the reins. But he didn't stop. He kept Martha's house in his mind like a prayer. Back at the homestead, Ada sat beside Tommy, rocking him gently, humming in Diné between quiet sobs. Lena crouched in the corner, eyes wide, holding the rabbit too tight. "I'm here," Ada whispered to her son. "I'm here." 20 minutes passed, then 30, then a knock. Ada rushed to the door. Cole stood there, covered in dust, face pale, eyes bloodshot. Behind him, Martha dismounted her mule cloak, whipping around her like a spirit out of legend. They moved fast. Martha's hands never trembled. She unpacked her satchel, ground herbs, boiled water, pressed poultices to Tommy's chest. She murmured things Ada couldn't understand, old words maybe not meant for her. Ada held Tommy's hand, watching as the color slowly returned to his lips. His breathing slowed, deepened. The fever broke like a fever always does, suddenly, quietly, like nothing had ever been wrong. Martha sat back, wiping her brow. He's past the worst. But next time it could go differently. Ada closed her eyes, pressing her forehead to Tommy's. Thank you. Cole stood off to the side, shaking slightly, still catching his breath. He didn't want thanks. He just wanted to know the kid would be okay. Martha handed him a water jar. Drink slowly. You look like someone wrung you out. He obeyed. She looked over at Ada. You got good luck, girl. That wind could have buried him halfway there. Ada reached for Cole's hand before she could think better of it. He didn't pull away. I didn't think you'd come back, she whispered. I told you I would. They sat with Tommy until he slept again, calm and warm. The storm raged outside, but inside the house was still. Shelter, home. That night, after Martha had gone, Cole lay in the same armchair he'd used since coming back. Ada moved around the kitchen in soft light, pouring tea, brushing Lena's hair. Tommy was tucked in tight with a cool cloth across his forehead, breathing slow, peaceful. Cole stared at the ceiling. I thought I'd lost him, Ada said, sitting beside him. You didn't. You don't know how many nights I've stayed awake listening for his breath. Cole said nothing. Ada's hands trembled around her mug. I've run from a lot of things, but not this. Not them. I'd give anything for them. He looked at her. You already are. She turned to him, her face raw. You weren't supposed to be part of this. He didn't answer right away. Then maybe I was the missing piece. Ada stared at him like she wasn't sure whether to believe that or not. But she didn't argue. The wind started to quiet around midnight. Just a soft whine now, like it had worn itself out. The porch creaked again, but the boards held. Ada leaned her head on the wall behind her. I used to think storms meant the worst was coming. But sometimes they blow away what needed to leave. Cole looked down at his hands, the scars on his knuckles, the way they didn't shake anymore. Maybe that's why I'm here. She looked over. I kept thinking I was supposed to recover in this house, he said. Turns out maybe I was just supposed to find it again. Outside, the land drank in the moisture. The desert always did. It didn't ask where the rain came from. It just took what it needed. In the other room, Tommy stirred and coughed once. Not the scary kind. Just a small sound. Then silence. Ada stood. I'll check him. Cole rose too. I'll help. They crossed the room together side by side. In 10 days, one of them would leave. But tonight, neither of them wanted to talk about that. Tonight, a boy was breathing. A storm had passed, and something that had been broken in both of them wasn't broken anymore. He's not your son, Cole. You don't get to love him halfway. The words didn't come out like Ada meant them to, not as an accusation, but as a wound. And once they were out there, thick and final in the warm air of the porch, neither of them moved. Cole leaned against the railing, one boot balanced on the step. Below, hands clenched just tight enough to turn the knuckles pale. His jaw worked, trying to grind down the words before they sparked. Inside, Lena's laughter echoed faintly through the window, her and Tommy playing a game she'd made up with buttons and stones. The kind of innocent sound that made everything feel okay even when it wasn't. But right now, nothing felt okay. Cole took a breath. It didn't help. I wasn't trying to play daddy, he said slowly. No. Ada stood across from him, arms folded, shoulders tight. Because that's what it looks like when you carry him around the yard, fix his toys, teach him how to hold a hammer. You tuck him in. You whisper things when you think I'm not listening. I care about him. I know you do, she said, softer now, but not gentler. That's what scares me. Cole blinked. Scares you? You think this is temporary? Like this house, like me. But they don't see it that way, Cole. Kids don't do temporary. He looked away. Out at the open sky beyond the ridge, the land stretched wide and patient like it had all the time in the world to watch people mess up their lives and try to fix them. Neither do I, he said finally. Ada's breath caught. She hadn't expected that. He turned to her. I don't do this lightly. I know I've made a hell of a mess of things before, but I'm not here to love anyone halfway. She sat on the porch swing, her voice low now. When Tommy was born, his lungs were too weak. They told me he might not make it through his first winter. I wrapped him in 4 blankets and held him through every night. Cole listened. His father never saw him, she continued. Never held him. We were gone before he had a chance to leave us first. I've spent every day since trying to prove that decision didn't ruin my son. Cole sat beside her, the swing creaking under their combined weight. He didn't touch her, didn't say anything for a long time. Then, "You didn't ruin him. You saved him." Ada let out a shaky breath. "You say you're not going anywhere. But what happens in 4 days, Cole?" He looked over at her. "I stay. Don't say that unless you mean it." "I do. You've got a life somewhere else, money, a name, that apartment in the city." Cole shook his head. "That life was killing me. I was 2 deals away from a second heart attack and a lonely funeral." Ada didn't respond right away. She just stared out over the yard where Lena was now trying to teach Tommy how to throw a pine cone like a baseball. "They trust you," she said, "and I can't have them broken by someone who's still deciding if this place fits his schedule." Cole leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You think I don't know what this means?" She looked at him. "I was alone for years, Ada. Money kept me moving, but it never kept me company. That boy crawled into my lap 2 days after we met like I'd always been there. And when he couldn't breathe, I felt like something in me stopped too. I'm not doing this halfway." Ada's eyes filled, but she blinked it away before anything spilled. She reached out, touching his hand lightly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It's just, I've had to survive so long I forget what it feels like to lean." Cole turned his hand to hold hers. "Then let me be the one you lean on," he said. They sat like that, hands clasped, until the sun dipped low and the sky turned soft orange. The kind of sunset that reminded you why you didn't leave places like this. The kind that whispered you belong here. Later that evening, Martha arrived with 2 jars of something that smelled both spicy and medicinal. She stepped onto the porch without a word, studying them like a hawk eyeing the wind. "You fought yet?" she asked. Ada raised an eyebrow, about what Martha smirked. "Then it's coming." She handed 1 jar to Ada, the other to Cole. "Put this in hot water. It'll keep the lungs clear." Cole sniffed it. "Smells like regret and cayenne." "Good," Martha said. "Means it's working." As she turned to leave, she glanced over her shoulder. "You're part of this now, Cole, whether you meant to be or not." He didn't argue. That night, after the kids were asleep and the house had quieted, Ada joined Cole by the fire pit behind the barn. The stars overhead were sharp and endless. "You really mean to stay?" she asked again. He nodded. "I'm not looking for charity," she said. "I know. Or rescue. I know that too." Ada pulled her knees to her chest, wrapping her shawl tighter. "What do you want then?" she asked. Cole turned to her, eyes steady. "I want to wake up where people know my name and my worst days and still want me around. I want to hear laughter in this house. I want to work this land like it's worth something again." She said nothing, but her eyes shone in the firelight. He added, "I want to be the man Tommy thinks I am." Ada let the words settle in her chest. And when she finally leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder, he didn't move. He just held the moment, knowing that trust like hers was a rare and sacred thing. Neither of them spoke again that night. But in the silence, something shifted. The man who had once left everything behind was learning what it meant to stay. And 4 days no longer felt like a countdown. They felt like the beginning of something he didn't want to end. He's not here to take what's yours. He's here to give what you never had. Lena stood at the edge of the hallway, arms crossed over her little chest, her chin set with a quiet fury that didn't belong on a face that young. Ada stood frozen just a few feet away, one hand still on the doorframe, breath caught mid-sentence. The evening light spilled in from the side window, casting long shadows across the wooden floor, like the house itself was holding its breath. Tommy had overheard them. Again. He wasn't in the kitchen where she'd left him humming to himself with a crayon in hand. His shoes were gone from the door. So was his small stuffed horse, his comfort thing, the one he never let go of when something felt wrong. Ada's heart dropped. She turned quickly. "Lena, did he say where he was going?" Lena's eyes didn't waver. "No. He just heard you say maybe we'd leave before the 10 days were up. He thought Cole didn't want us anymore." Ada swallowed hard. "That's not what I meant. He's 5, Mama. He doesn't speak meant. He hears what you say." The words stung more because they were true. Ada bent down and gripped her knees, breathing in through her nose. "All right. Okay. We'll find him." Lena moved first, grabbing her jacket, her braid bouncing as she ran for the door. Ada followed, but paused on the porch. "Where would he go?" Lena didn't hesitate. "The treehouse." It wasn't really a treehouse, more like the skeleton of one. Just some old planks left behind by the boy who used to live here. Cole had started fixing it up last week after Tommy asked if it could be made safe again. They hadn't finished. The climb wasn't dangerous, but it was high enough to make Ada's stomach turn. She sprinted through the yard past the garden, past the old wheelbarrow, and spotted him before she even got there, curled up under the roofless frame, his little arms wrapped tight around his horse cheeks streaked with dust and tears. She climbed up carefully, heart in her throat. "Tommy," she called softly, "you scared me." He didn't look at her, just sniffled. "I heard you," he mumbled. "You don't want to stay." She sat beside him, ignoring the way her knees groaned from the climb. "That's not true." "You said I know what I said," she interrupted gently, "and I'm sorry. I didn't say it right." He wiped his nose on his sleeve. "Is Cole mad?" Ada shook her head. "No, baby. Cole's not mad. He'd be scared same as me if you went missing." Tommy looked up, face blotchy and red. "But if we leave, he'll be okay, right?" Her chest tightened. "He might be. But I don't think he wants to be okay without you." From the bottom of the ladder, Lena's voice rose up. "He's not here to take what's yours. He's here to give what you never had." Tommy looked down at her, eyes wide. Ada blinked back tears. That girl. Always listening. Always seeing more than she let on. "Come on," she said softly, brushing Tommy's hair back. "Let's go home." Back at the house, Cole was pacing the front porch, breath-shallow eyes scanning the horizon. When he saw them crossing the ridge, he dropped the hammer he'd been holding mid-repair and sprinted to meet them. He didn't say anything, just dropped to one knee and pulled Tommy into a hug so fierce Ada thought the boy might burst. "I'm sorry," Cole whispered into the boy's hair. "I'm not going anywhere, all right. Not without you." Tommy sniffled. "Okay." Ada stood a few feet back, her arms crossed, watching. When Tommy finally let go, Cole looked up at her. "I don't want him to ever feel like he has to earn a place here, I know," she said. He rose slowly, dust on his jeans, his hands still shaking. "I've been afraid to say it. To say what this is becoming." Ada tilted her head. "And now," he stepped closer. "Now I'm more afraid not to." The silence between them was warm this time, not sharp. That night after dinner, cornbread beans, and the last of Martha's sweet preserves. Lena pulled out her notebook and sat on the porch next to Cole. "I wrote something," she said. "Do you want to hear?" Cole nodded. She cleared her throat. "It's not a poem. It's more like a list. All right. She looked down at the page. Reasons why Cole is not just some guy who owns this house. He chuckled. That's the title, yup. She read 1, he fixes things that aren't his, like the treehouse. 2, he makes coffee better than Mama, don't tell her I said that. 3, he doesn't talk down to me. 4, he listens when I'm mad. 5, he smells like cedar and old books. Cole smiled. 6, he makes Mama laugh when she thinks no one sees. 7, he looks at us like we're already his. Ada had stepped outside at some point, standing just behind the door. She didn't speak, didn't move, just listened. Cole looked at Lena. That's quite a list. I left room for more. He reached out and gently ruffled her hair. Keep writing. I'll try to earn the rest. That night, as the kids fell asleep under a quilt stitched from old shirts and New Hope Ada sat by the window, the lantern flickering, Cole joined her quietly. You ever think he said that maybe all the worst things we go through are just leading us somewhere better? Ada glanced at him. I want to believe that. I do. She leaned her head against the glass. They deserve better. So do you. He didn't try to kiss her, didn't reach for her hand. He just sat there close enough to feel the warmth between them. Outside, the wind had died down. The stars were coming out again. And for the first time in years, Ada didn't feel like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Instead, she was beginning to wonder what life might look like if the shoe stayed. You didn't just leave this town, Cole. You left the wreckage behind for the rest of us to carry. The words landed like a backhand across the face, harsh, fast, and more honest than Cole wanted to hear. It was Hank Ryland who said it, gray-stubbled, wiry, and bitter, the way old men get when time gives them more pain than peace. He stood at the front of the general store, one hand resting on a sack of feed, the other pointing like he had a right to call judgment. Cole didn't flinch, but he didn't speak right away either. He'd come to town to pick up nails and kerosene, nothing more. He hadn't planned on seeing half the town gathered on Main or on being confronted by ghosts in broad daylight. But Rustwood Ridge had always been a place where nothing stayed buried. I didn't ask anyone to carry anything, Cole finally said. You didn't have to, Hank snapped. You left, your daddy got meaner, your mama got sicker, and the bank came sniffin' not long after. This place barely held together. You were the only son they had, and you disappeared like dust in a windstorm. A few others watched from under wide-brimmed hats, eyes cautious but not surprised. Word had spread Cole was back living in the old house, shacked up with a woman and her kids. And people around here, they remembered everything, especially the parts that hurt. Cole's fists stayed at his sides. He didn't raise his voice. I know what I did. Do you? Hank stepped closer. Do you know what it felt like to see your mama put her name on canned food drives pretending she didn't need 'em? Or how it was your mother who kept this town honest while your father soured half of it? Cole looked at the dust under his boots. He did know. He just hadn't wanted to face it all at once like this. Let him talk, Hank, came a calm voice. Roy Tumbleweed stood across the street, arms folded, leaning against the wall outside the barber shop. He looked tired of men puffing their chests like they held the town's soul in their palms. Hank turned spit to the side. You always did protect him. Roy shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of blame that's easier to throw than carry. But Cole held up a hand. No, he's not wrong. The crowd quieted. Cole looked at Hank. You're right. I left, And I didn't come back when I should have. Not for my mother, not for this place. And I can't fix the years I missed. I don't expect a parade. He took a breath. But I'm not just passing through. I'm trying to make something here again. Not for me, for the people still standing. A murmur moved through the small crowd. Nothing loud, but something shifted, less hostility, more curiosity, maybe even doubt. Hank looked away, muttered, "Too little, too late." But he didn't say more. Back at the homestead, Ada was working on the broken hinge of the chicken coop when she saw Cole ride up. Dust coated his sleeves. His shoulders were tense. "Town was talkin'," she asked. He nodded. "They mad you didn't stay?" "They're mad I stayed away," he said. "And maybe they should be." Ada handed him the wrench. "They forget people leave for a reason. They don't care about reasons. They care about what got left behind." Ada turned toward him, her face unreadable. "And what did you leave behind?" He didn't answer. Not yet. That night after the kids were asleep, Cole sat on the porch with Roy. The bottle between them was half full. The silence was heavier than usual. "You gonna tell her?" Roy asked. "Tell her what?" "That you had a brother." Cole's hand froze midway to the glass. Roy nodded. "I figured it out. When you were 16. There was a picture in your mama's sewing drawer, 2 babies. Twins." Cole swallowed. "He died young. Your father never talked about him. Because he blamed my mother. Said she favored me. That it was her fault." Roy shook his head. "That kind of loss eats people different." Cole stared into the dark. "That's what broke us. Not business. Not dreams. Just grief that turned us all into strangers." Roy looked toward the house. "You gonna let her in on all that I want to," Cole said. "But I don't know how." Roy stood patting his shoulder. "Start with the truth. Always." The next morning, Cole took Tommy fishing at the stream, just the two of them. They didn't catch anything, but they laughed. Cole showed him how to skip stones, how to clean his hands with sand when there's no water. Tommy asked if they'd do this every week. Cole said yes before thinking, and he meant it. Later, he found Ada fixing the broken fence post by the goat pen. She didn't look up. "You were gone a while," she said. Tommy needed it. She drove the nail deeper with a steady swing. "And you..." He stepped beside her. "I need this whole place." Finally, she looked at him. "I'm not a charity case," she said. "I know. I don't need a man to raise my kids. I know that too." She set the hammer down and crossed her arms. "Then why are you still here?" Cole reached into his jacket and pulled out a faded photograph. 2 babies. 1 crib. "I had a brother," he said. "His name was Jesse. He died when we were 4. Fever. Quick. My mother never talked about it. My father. It broke something in him." Ada didn't speak. Cole went on. "That grief hollowed our house. My mom tried to fill it. I tried to run from it. And I think I kept running until I landed here again." Ada took the photo gently, studied it. "That's why you never talk about your childhood." He nodded. "It wasn't all bad, but it was quiet in the wrong ways." She touched the edge of the photo. "So what do you want now?" Cole looked at her, really looked. A life where no one's afraid to speak. Where grief doesn't rot the roots. Where kids know they're wanted and love doesn't have to be earned. Ada's expression softened. Then quietly, "You think this place can hold that I think it already is." And with the wind rising behind them and the sun dipping low across the ridge, she didn't say yes. But she didn't say no either. Don't mistake comfort for commitment, Cole. One is easy. The other stays when things get ugly. The words hung between them like thick smoke from a fire neither of them wanted to admit was still burning. Ada didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her tone was steady, controlled in a way that told Cole this wasn't sudden, and it wasn't small. It had been building, and he hadn't seen it. They were standing in the barn. The morning sun filtered through the slats, dust dancing in beams of light. Cole had just finished patching the roof shirt. Damp hands scraped hammer still in his back pocket. He felt good, accomplished, like this was what it meant to be here, to stay. But Ada's eyes told a different story. "What did I do?" he asked carefully, unsure if he was walking into a storm or just catching the tail of one. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached for the sack of feed, slung it over her shoulder like it didn't weigh a thing, and dropped it by the trough. "You're doing everything right," she finally said. "That's the problem." Cole blinked. "I don't follow. You're fixing fences, cooking dinner, reading bedtime stories. You're here, but only here when things are going well. You haven't said one word about what happens when they don't." He frowned. "You think I'll leave? I think you still haven't decided what you're willing to lose if staying gets hard." He stepped forward. "I told you I'm not going anywhere." "No. You told me you don't want to go anywhere." "Not the same thing." He swallowed. "So what? You're testing me now." She shook her head. "This isn't a test. It's a mirror. You say you want a life here, but you haven't committed to anything real. Not to the land. Not to me. Not to them." Cole rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm doing everything I can." "No," Ada said sharply. "You're doing everything that's safe. You're useful, Cole. You're kind. But you haven't let anyone need you yet." "Not really." That hit harder than anything Hank had said in town. He opened his mouth, closed it again. "I grew up in a house where men left." Ada continued, "Even when they stayed. You want to be different, then stop pretending being here is enough." The silence was sharp, aching. Somewhere outside, a goat bleated. A hawk cried from up in the ridge. Finally, Cole spoke. "What do you want from me? Nothing you don't already have," she said. "Just give it to us without being afraid of what it means." That afternoon, he went into town again. Not for supplies, for the lawyer. The old office on Main still had the same cracked leather couch, the same dusty bookshelves, the same smell of wood polish and stale coffee. Paul Jenkins looked up when Cole walked in. "Well, I'll be damned. You're the last Hawthorne I expected to see in here voluntarily." Cole sat down. "I want to transfer the deed." Paul blinked. "To who? To me. And then partially to someone else." "Family." Cole hesitated. "Not by blood." Paul whistled. "Well, that's new. You sure about this?" "No," Cole admitted. "But I'm done waiting to be sure." When he got home, the sun was beginning to set. Ada was in the kitchen with Lena teaching her how to slice apples without losing a fingertip. Tommy was sitting on the porch, playing with two carved wooden figures Cole had whittled last week. Cole sat beside him, watched him for a minute. "You ever been scared to do the right thing?" he asked the boy. Tommy didn't look up. "I was scared to jump in the river the first time. Thought I'd sink, and you were there." That one sentence cracked something open in Cole's chest. The simplicity of it. The trust. "I need to talk to your mom," he said, standing. Tommy nodded like he understood something unspoken. In the kitchen, Ada turned when she heard him. Her face was unreadable. "I went into town," he said. "Yeah." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "This is the deed. The land's officially in my name now, and I'm adding you to it." She stared. "Why?" "Because I'm not just staying. I'm investing. In you. In them. In this land. I'm done thinking of this as temporary." Ada's eyes welled. She didn't blink. "I know that doesn't fix everything," he added. "But it's a start. It's me saying I'm not going to disappear the second things stop feeling easy." She walked forward slowly, took the paper from his hand, read it, then read it again. "Why now?" she asked quietly. "Because you were right," he said. "I was giving comfort, not commitment, and I'm not proud of that. But I'm not that man anymore." Lena came in, then wiping her hands on a dish towel. Ada looked at her. "Tell your brother it's time for bed." Lena paused, studied them both. "You too good," Ada smiled, faint but real. "Getting there." Later that night, Cole sat by the window watching the moonlight ripple across the hills. Ada came to sit beside him. "No one's ever done that for me before," she said. "What put your name on land?" "Nomwa. Chosen me without needing a reason." He looked at her. "You were always the reason." They didn't kiss. Didn't touch. But they didn't need to. Sometimes silence was its own promise. Outside, the wind picked up again. A low, steady hum. Storm weather was coming. But this time they weren't alone in facing it. "He's mine, Ada. And I came back for him." The man standing in the yard looked like someone torn from a different lifetime, weathered face, lean frame, eyes that had once made promises and broken them all. Ada knew that voice even before she turned fully to face it, and her stomach dropped. Micah. He stood beside a rust-bitten truck, a duffel slung over one shoulder, like he was just passing through. But that wasn't how he said it. He said it like he meant to stay. Tommy was frozen behind her, his small fingers tightening around the hem of her skirt. Lena stood in the doorway, expression hard, like she'd heard stories, and already decided she hated him. Cole stepped out of the barn, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. He didn't recognize the man yet, but he saw the way Ada's shoulders tensed, the way Tommy shrank, and that told him everything he needed. "Who is this?" Cole asked, already knowing the answer. Ada didn't answer. Micah did. "Name's Micah Bennett. Tommy's father." The silence cracked. "No." "Ada," said finally, voice steady but low. "You're the man who ran the second. Things got hard." "I didn't come here to fight," Micah said. "I came here to make things right." Cole stepped forward, instinct moving faster than logic. You can't just show up after 5 years and expect Micah cut him off with a look. "And I'm the man who carried that boy to a healer when he couldn't breathe. I'm the one who held him through the night while he cried out from fever. I'm the one who stayed." Micah scoffed. "Doesn't make you his blood." "No," Cole said. "Just makes me the one who gives a damn." Ada stepped between them. "This isn't about you two," she said. "It's about Tommy." "I want to see him," Micah said. "Just for a minute." Tommy clung tighter to her leg. She knelt, brushed his hair back. "It's okay," she said gently. "You don't have to." He didn't answer. He just buried his face into her side. "That's your answer," Cole said. Micah's jaw tightened. "I got rights." "No," Ada snapped. "You gave those up when you walked out and never looked back. No letters, no calls, no support. You disappeared." "I was sick," he argued. "Lost everything after the fire. Could barely walk for 2 years." "You didn't even ask about him," Ada said, voice rising now. "You let me believe you were dead. And now you show up and say you came back for him like you're some kind of savior." Cole moved beside her, one hand resting gently on her back. Micah's gaze flicked to it. "So this what it is now? You and him playing house?" Ada took a breath. "It's not playing. This is a home." Micah laughed once, bitter. "I came to ask. Now I'm telling. I want time with my son." "No," she said firmly. "You don't get to decide that alone." "I do," she said, "because I was the one holding him when he couldn't breathe. I was the one working 2 jobs, fixing shoes at night, trading jam for medicine. I was the one who stayed when it was just crying and silence." Micah's shoulders dropped, the fight dimming a little in his eyes. "I'm not here to take him," he said, voice quieter now. "I just want to know him. Just a little." "You want something easy," Ada replied. "A few visits, a cleaned-up version of what you missed. But this," she pointed to the porch, to the tools Cole had left behind, to the quilt Lena had hung over the railing to dry. "This is what you gave up. Day in, day out. You don't get to step into the middle of it and expect welcome." Micah looked down, said nothing. "You can write to him," she added. "Send something honest. No lies, no promises. We'll see what happens." He looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He just nodded. "I'll send a letter." Then he turned, threw his duffel in the truck bed, and drove off in a cloud of dust that didn't feel like closure, just more unfinished business. After he left, the yard was silent. Tommy stood near the porch steps, watching the dust settle. Ada knelt beside him. "You okay, baby?" He didn't speak, just leaned into her small hands, wrapping around her arms. That night she sat on the porch with Cole, the moon high and pale above them. "He's gonna come back," she said. Cole nodded. "Probably. I don't want to live in fear of that." "You won't have to." She looked over. "You sure?" Cole met her eyes. "Not about him, but I'm sure about us." She exhaled, long and shaky. "You handled that better than I would have," she admitted. He smiled faintly, was ready to swing a hammer. "I know." They sat in silence for a while. Then Ada said, "I don't want Micah taking up space in our future. He won't. But he will try. That kind of man always does." Cole nodded. "Then we'll be ready." She reached over and took his hand. "Thank you for not stepping in first. For letting me speak." Cole's voice was quiet. "This is your fight, Ada. But I'm in your corner. Always." The wind picked up warm and dry. Somewhere out on the ridge, a coyote cried. And in the house behind them, Lena and Tommy slept side by side, safe, unaware, whole. Tomorrow the sun would rise again, and with it the fight to protect what was theirs. "You don't get to fix the past, Cole, but you damn sure get to fight for the future." Roy's voice carried across the field like a warning, but not the kind meant to stop a man. More like a reminder of where his boots were planted and what was worth standing on. Cole stood knee-deep in dry brush, The fence line behind him, half mended, half forgotten. He had a hammer in one hand, his other shielding his eyes from the hard glare of the midday sun. Sweat ran down his neck, the ache in his shoulders settling in like something permanent. He hadn't spoken since Roy arrived, just kept working the post into place. "You hear me?" Roy called again, moving closer now, boots crunching on dirt. Cole nodded once. "I hear you." Roy stopped a few feet away, arms folded across his chest. "Then why you out here beating yourself into the ground like penance is a building material?" Cole didn't answer right away. He just kept hammering until the post groaned into place, then leaned on it, chest rising and falling with slow, tired breaths. "I saw Micah in town this morning," Roy said. Cole's head lifted. "Yeah, he was asking about lawyers. Custody visitation said he's got family in Santa Fe willing to vouch for him. Said he's got steady work now." Cole's jaw clenched. Of course he did. Roy studied him. "You told Ada no?" "Not yet." Roy sighed. "She deserves to know. So do the kids." Cole ran a hand down his face. "I know, I wanted one more quiet day. One more day where we weren't holding our breath." Roy looked toward the horizon. "You're not gonna outrun this. But you already knew that." Cole turned to him. "I can't let him take Tommy." "Then don't," Roy said simply. "But don't do it by yourself." That night, Cole sat in front of the fireplace, staring into the low flicker of coals. Ada entered quietly, carrying a blanket and 2 mugs of tea. She handed one to him, then sat across on the rug, folding her legs under her. "I saw the look on your face when Roy stopped by," she said. He didn't meet her eyes. "What happened?" Cole took a slow sip of tea, then set the mug down. "Micah's talking lawyers. He's trying to build a case." Ada's face didn't change right away. Just a small stillness settled into her features. "He wants to take him?" she asked. Cole nodded. "Or at least get regular access." "Leverage." Ada's voice dropped. "He won't get it. He might try harder than we think. Courts love blood." "I bled for that boy," she snapped. "Where was Micah when Tommy was wheezing at midnight or coughing blood in the basin?" Cole leaned forward. I know, but this isn't just about what's right. It's about what can be proven." Ada looked away, her voice sharp with grief. "So what? We lose him because some man reappeared with paperwork and clean boots?" "No," Cole said, steady now. "Because I'm going to fight like hell to make sure we don't." Ada looked at him, something softening just enough for the pain to show. Why Cole didn't hesitate. "Because he's my son too now." She blinked. "I know I didn't earn that with blood," he went on. "But I earned it with every scraped knee I patched, every nightmare I stayed up through, every story I read, even when I was too tired to keep my eyes open." Ada's throat worked around words that didn't come. "You don't get to fix the past," she whispered, "but you damn sure get to fight for the future." He reached across the space and took her hand. "I already am." The next morning, Cole rose early, before the sun, before the heat. He drove into town and found the same lawyer Micah had visited, Paul Jenkins. "Need help?" Paul asked, raising an eyebrow. "Need protection," Cole replied. "For a boy who's mine in every way that counts." Paul leaned back in his creaky chair. "That's a hard case to argue without legal guardianship or marriage." Cole dropped a file on the desk. Inside photos, doctor records with his name, as emergency contact school, forms signed with his handwriting, a letter from Martha. Even a drawing from Tommy that said, "My dad, Cole." Paul flipped through slowly. This helps. Make it count, Cole said. By the time he got back to the homestead, the kids were running through the field behind the barn, chasing a kite Lena had stitched from old flour sacks and leftover yarn. Ada stood at the edge watching them, like someone measuring joy by its fragility. He walked up beside her. It started. She nodded. I need to ask you something, he said. Okay. I know we haven't talked about it much, but if we're going to protect him, I need something more than shared chores and promises. I need to be legally part of this family. Ada turned toward him slowly. You're asking me to marry you. I'm asking you to let me fight for us with everything I've got. And if that means marriage, then yeah. I'm asking. She didn't laugh. She didn't look shocked. She just said, okay. He blinked. Okay, yes. Just like that, I've been saying yes in 100 ways for weeks, Cole. I was just waiting for you to say it out loud. That evening, they sat with Martha on the porch, telling her everything. You know, Martha said, pouring herself a small cup of whiskey, this isn't going to be clean. Or easy. The courts'll dig. So will his family. I figured, Cole said. But you've got something stronger than all that. What's that? He asked. Martha looked toward the house where Tommy was curled up next to Lena on the floor, fast asleep under that same old quilt. Proof of love. Cole exhaled long and quiet. And proof, Martha added, ain't always made of blood. That night, Cole lay awake beside Ada. She was already asleep, one hand resting gently over his chest. Outside, the coyotes were quieter than usual. Even the wind seemed to hush. He stared at the ceiling and thought, let them come. Because now, for the first time in a long time, he had something worth defending. And he wasn't going to let anyone take it away. The courthouse in Santa Fe was colder than it needed to be. Not just the air, but the walls, the lights. Everything felt like it had been built to make people smaller. Cole sat stiff-backed in the hard wooden bench, one hand wrapped tight around Ada's. She wasn't trembling, but she wasn't steady either. Her jaw was set, eyes forward. Tommy sat between them, swinging his feet over the edge of the bench, his little hands clenching a worn wooden horse, the same one Cole had carved for him last fall. He hadn't let go of it since they'd walked in. Across the aisle, Micah sat in a pressed flannel shirt, tie too tight, looking like someone who'd tried hard to scrub out 5 years of absence, with a haircut and a fresh shave. His lawyer whispered something in his ear. He nodded, but didn't look over. The judge entered. Everyone stood. It didn't take long. The lawyer laid out the facts. Micah had reappeared, expressed interest, had legal rights on paper. But on the other side, Cole and Ada had something deeper testimony from neighbors, doctors, school staff. Photos, letters, statements. Most of all, they had Tommy. When the judge asked if the child wanted to speak, Ada tensed. But Tommy stood. Small, sure. He walked to the center of the room and turned to the judge. I don't know my dad from before. He's a stranger. But Cole isn't. He tucks me in. He fixes my boots. He taught me to fish. He reads the boring parts of stories so I don't have to. He makes pancakes the wrong shape. A soft laugh rippled through the courtroom. Tommy glanced back at Ada. And he makes Mama smile. Real smiles. Not the pretend kind. Then he looked back at the judge. He's my dad. That was it. He walked back, climbed into Cole's lap, and didn't say another word. The judge recessed. 20 minutes later, she came back with a decision, shared visitation, for Micah supervised limited to short monthly meetings for the next year. All decisions, schooling, medical, and otherwise, remained with Ada. Cole was granted guardianship rights. Their petition for joint adoption would be reviewed in 6 months, pending Micah's consistency. It wasn't everything they hoped for, but it was a win. Outside the courthouse, Ada leaned against Cole's shoulder, while Tommy ran circles around them, swinging his wooden horse like a victory flag. Lena trailed behind, quieter eyes, watchful. "You okay?" Cole asked. Ada nodded. "I think so. It's not perfect, but it's peace. For now, that's all we can ask." A week later, they stood under the cottonwood tree behind the house. Cole had sanded down the old swing and fixed the rope. Tommy and Lena took turns while Ada picked herbs from the garden, her hair tied up a smudge of dirt on her cheek. Martha sat in her rocking chair on the porch, shelling peas, watching them all, like a woman who'd lived through enough to know when something rare was unfolding. "You finally look like you belong here," she said, when Cole brought her a glass of lemonade. He sat beside her, eyes on Ada. "Took me a while to believe I could." "You were never missing the roots, son. Just the courage to let 'em grow." He smiled. "You think we'll be all right?" "You will," Martha said, "because you've already been through the fire. This part now, this is the living." That night after the kids were asleep, Cole and Ada sat on the porch steps, a quilt over their laps. The stars were out. No coyotes, no wind, just the hum of night settling in. "I was scared it wouldn't be enough," Ada said quietly. "That love couldn't hold it all together." Cole looked at her. "It can't." She turned to him confused. "Love's not meant to carry everything," he said. "But it's what makes the carrying worth it." Ada nodded slowly. "You really believe that I do now?" She rested her head on his shoulder. "I used to think home was just survival. A roof, a door, quiet. And now I think it's people. The ones who show up, who stay." Cole looked out across the ridge. The moonlight dusted the hills in silver. "You know," he said, "I spent most of my life trying to fix what came before. But maybe it was never about repair. Maybe it was about planting something new." She smiled. "Something that can't be torn down so easy." They sat in silence, wrapped in warmth that had taken years of loss to earn. The kind of quiet that doesn't ache. The kind that breathes. Eventually, Cole spoke again, voice low. "You ever think about the other side of the story? The version where I never came back, sometimes," she admitted. "But then I remind myself that version didn't happen." He nodded. "Because you left the door open." She chuckled. "No, because Tommy forgot to lock it that first night." They both laughed. The door had been cracked after all, just enough to let in the man who would change everything. A few months passed. The homestead bloomed in ways no one expected. The chickens finally started laying again. The treehouse got finished, complete with a roof, a rope ladder, and a tiny shelf where Tommy kept his wooden horse. Lena started drawing again. Pages and pages filled with mountains, stars, a house that looked a lot like theirs. And in the center, a family, 4 figures, arms locked, smiles wide. Cole found her sketchbook one day and didn't say anything. He just added a note at the bottom of the page. "This is real. We're real." And it was. Real, not perfect. Messy, hard, and sacred. The kind of life you build with your hands and heart, not just your hope. One morning after a storm, they woke to find a field of wildflowers behind the barn blooms that hadn't been there the season before. Ada swore they were new. Cole said maybe they'd been waiting. Waiting for the right soil, the right time. Like us, Ada said. And he agreed. That spring, they got married under the cottonwood tree. Just family. No fanfare. Tommy held the rings. Lena read a poem she wrote herself. Martha cried quietly. Roy gave a toast that was more a grunt and a nod, but it meant the world. Afterward, as they danced barefoot in the dust, Ada whispered into Cole's ear, "We made it." He pulled her closer. "We're still making it." And that was the truth. They weren't a miracle. They were a choice. One day after the next, choosing to stay, to love, to rebuild. And if there was any message to be taken from all of it, it was this: you don't always get to start over. But sometimes, if you're lucky, life gives you a second chapter. And if you're brave enough to write it honestly, with the scars, the fears, the hope, it just might be better than the first.